Everyone, Matt here from Doctors Running, and today we're going to do a 100-mile review of the Adidas Adizero Adios Pro 3. So those that saw me last year know that I really liked the Adidas Adios Pro 2. My biggest issue was that it was very biased to one side, and the durability was terrible. I never got to do a 40 or 100-mile review because I usually made it about 40 miles before I ripped through the outsole. Fortunately, I was able to find them pretty cheap on eBay and get a couple pairs, which I definitely enjoyed. Raced a couple times in them, was really nice, but they just did not last. And I was torn because it worked very well for my mechanics, but I don't think it worked that well for a lot of other people. And so, yeah, there were some other issues too where I didn't really understand the differentiation other than stack height between the Takumi Sen 8 and the Adidas Adios Pro 2, because I actually preferred, even for 5K, the Adios Pro 2. That has really changed in version 3. It's a totally revamped shoe. They changed a lot of things. The essence is still there, but they updated a lot of things, I think, in a positive way. Some people might be a little frustrated, but I think overall it's better and differentiates better. So now, again, this is going to be your marathon, maybe half marathon, probably half marathon racer for the majority of people, whereas the Takumi Sen now fills the niche and slot of a 5K, 10K racer. Why is that? Because this is a great distance shoe. It's not so hot on shorter distances. I've had a lot of trouble with this trying to run shorter, faster intervals, but you give me a threshold run, you can give me a long run at maybe a slightly up tempo pace. It's perfect. I've done plenty of easy pace long runs, and I probably would suggest breaking it a little bit. And with some of the changes we'll talk about, you'll understand why. Break it in a little bit before you do that, just because it's fairly stiff, but it works. And I think it's actually going to work for a lot of people that are looking for a quote-unquote super shoe for distance races, but maybe either you don't want something as aggressive or as soft as some of the other options out there. Yes, there's full-length Light Strike Pro here, which feels great, but it's also really stiff and inherently stable. I'm giving this one of my top stable neutral shoes of the year, especially stable racing shoes for the year. There isn't any traditional form of stability, so there's no sidewalls, but the way the geometry is set up and how stiff now with the full-length rods here, it's going to be a more guided ride centrally rather than biased laterally like the Adios Pro 2. There's still some similar stuff. Again, the Light Strike Pro is still here. Some of the heel bevel stuff, it's more centered. There is not, from my understanding, a plate in the rear foot that's kind of biasing one direction. It's full-length rods, which means that things are really stiff. There is very little longitudinal bending here. I'm sorry, torsional bending here, and even less longitudinal. So it's a very stiff shoe, which is why it does need to break in a little bit. The stiffness contributes to the fact that, I did notice the 6.5 millimeter drop initially. Over time, I haven't noticed it at all. It's 39.5 in the heel, 33 in the forefoot. Yeah, it doesn't feel like a super high drop shoe, but it doesn't feel like a low drop. It's kind of in that nice middle ground, which has been really nice. It did need some breaking in. It was definitely a little stiff at first. Once you break it in after a couple miles, it's actually a really fun shoe. It's a great shoe. What is it best for? It's best for marathon, half marathon based efforts. Again, I struggled getting it to go a little bit faster. That might also be me, just because I don't have a lot of speed in my legs right now. But even trying to do some short distance stuff, it was much easier to do that in Takumi Sen than this. So long distance, marathon efforts, marathon racing is going to be really good. Long distance stuff. If I had to go run a marathon tomorrow, I would get a new pair based on this. But this would probably be one of the shoes that I reach for first, just because I feel like I can trust it. I did easy runs in it. I've done long runs in it. I've done fartleks. I've done lots of threshold and long efforts in this shoe. And it's really good and it's really comfortable, which is nice because it feels, again, something I'm looking for. Feels very centered. I haven't had any issues with post-hip soreness or Achilles issues in this shoe. This on this end, it's again very wide platform, so there's a lot of sole flare here that centers the ride instead of biasing it one direction. So I think it will work for more people this time. Fit, they fixed the issues with the fit, so it's not fitting a half size long like the other version. That didn't bother me in version 2 until I started doing some longer races, and then I started to notice it more. It's a little bit on the wider side for a racing shoe. There's a good amount of forefoot room here, so I felt like I could, spread my toes out without having any slippage issues. So security was fine. I never had to lace lock this, but it's super thin. Upper is very thin. There's still a little structure to it, but it was one of those shoes where it didn't really bother me with like any longer efforts. And the best thing about this, same thing with version 2, there's really not much in the way of a heel counter. So people that are sensitive to heel counters, you are gonna definitely like this shoe. David had some fit issues with some stuff pushing into his feet here just because there's some overlays that create some additional structure. I had no issue. It's a fairly simple and very thin upper. It doesn't have the plasticky mesh like last time. So breathable, not great for super cold weather, but it's a good minimal upper that still provides some structure. In terms of durability, I gotta, again, go back to this. Yes, you see me burn through this at 100 miles. That's just me, but it is so much better than version 2. I'm pretty sure if my mechanics were not as wonky as they are on my left side, that this would last much longer. My right shoe is totally fine, so I'm actually really sad that I have to retire these because now I can actually feel this divot because I am a heel striker. Speaking of that, landing wherever you want feels fine. I've gotten up my toes, I've gotten on my heel. Everything feels fine. Geometrically, they've done a really good job. The interesting part about this, I felt as I get up on my forefoot, it does feel a little bit biased laterally. So people that have issues collapsing inwards at the forefoot, this might be a great option for, if not for that, even if you don't feel it, for the fact that it is so stiff up front. If you like stiffness, that's something you're going to want to, you'll be interested in this shoe. If you want a flexible ride that's lower stacked, this is not going to be a great option for you. But I really enjoyed it. Is it the fastest shoe out there? I think if you're an elite athlete and you could slam into the ground and put a lot of force in, yes. I think if you're looking for a shoe that's maybe not the most, if it's like inherently stable there and you want something that has a quote unquote a little more super foam-esque but not the most aggressive one, I think this would be a great option. You know, for me, this is the shoe that I grab for workouts. Or something like if I'm going, I'm not sure, I'm not confident about today, this is what I'm going to grab. If I'm going for a PR effort, I'm looking for the fastest thing, this is not going to be the shoe I choose, just because, I think there's some faster options out there, but it is the one that I tend to trust if I don't know what's coming my way, at least on the road. Don't use this on, I know David uses his stuff on trail. This is not a trail shoe. That being said, I don't work for Adidas or have any connections, but I have seen what looked like a trail version of this, so I'm super excited. I would love to see that. I hope it comes to market and doesn't just become one of those tester things that gets tossed once it breaks. But anyway, that's off topic. So this is a marathon and long distance racer. It's far more durable than the previous version. They fixed the fit issues. It's much more centered in terms of the ride. Yes, it's stiffer, I think, underfoot, but if you like that and how it breaks in, it makes it kind of more friendly once you get underfoot. So a lot of people are going, I'm having trouble with X shoe, just it's too soft, but I still want a shoe that I can do my long runs in and prep for the marathon or the half marathon. I think this would be a great option just because it's done really well for me on that. And I think the centered ride will work well for a lot of people. That thin upper, again, if you have calcaneus issues like Haglund deformities, this is going to be a great thing. And yeah, it can go fast. And it's just one of those shoes that feels good when you get into a rhythm. It just feels like you can keep going. So yeah, so that's the 100-mile review. I wish I could get more miles out of this, but unfortunately I have to retire this pair. I am excited to see what happens with the next version. I don't know where they'll go from here. I think this is pretty solid. I think it's just more biased towards those longer distances. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't have any predictions, but so far Adidas, nice job. Center things a little bit. We'll check in with you soon.